Gituku is on phone with us to talk about his former boss, his life before and after retirement. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Gituku. We really appreciate your time. You served as his private secretary. What's your reaction to his passing?
This is a momentous loss for some of us at both personal and official angles. His Excellency has been a good mentor, has, in his own quiet way, taught us to believe in certain values that we will cherish for the rest of our lives. And, I am privileged to have had the privilege to work for him.
Yes, and how often did you see him after retirement, and how was his life like?
Well, being the private secretary, in other words, the accounting officer at his office, there was regular interaction with him, regular updates as in the course of running his office. And our work was to give support to his post-retirement agenda, which is anchored in an act of parliament that requires the retired president to do certain things as directed by, the law. So we were fulfilling the agenda that he was mandated to fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Mwai Kibaki was born and raised, of course, in the village and went to local primary schools before proceeding to Mangu High School. Can you say this humble upbringing was a reason he wanted better for every Kenyan?
I wouldn't quite say so, because this gentleman, and a gentleman par excellence, was unique in his own way. At no time did I ever sniff anything in his personality that sounded like he did not take time to know who he was and what he really wanted for himself and for the greater good of his countrymen and women. So his resolve to be who he was, a great man, an icon, a paragon of excellence, was all about him being able to define who he was and know his purpose. Mm-hmm. The man was intuitive beyond measure, and he's uniquely endowed to be arguably one of the greatest human capital assets ever known in this continent. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Most of his friends were his golf buddies in Muthaiga and not politicians. Of course, his family was rarely seen in public. How was he like, and what made him distinctively different?
To begin with, I wouldn't call His Excellency Mwai Kibaki a politician per se. I would call him a political leader, and not just a political leader, a very focused and very driven political leader who knew exactly what he wanted for his people and who knew what leadership meant or means. And to him, if I may say, leadership was not about serving self or some form of showbiz. It was setting systems that would change people's circumstances and dignify them. So that's the man I know. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And talking of his family, none of his children got into politics, which is rare for a politician of such a stature. Why do you think this is the case?
Well, one of his sons, Jimmy Kibaki, is involved in politics. But I would say on a general scale that His Excellency left people to their whims, did not force you or create a situation where you have to succeed him. He was his own man, and he wanted everybody else around him to be their own person. So He wouldn't coerce or make arrangements to hatch a situation where one of his own would necessarily succeed him. That's not his nature. That's not his trajectory of thought.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, what do you remember fondly about him?
One of the things people don't know about this gentleman is that he's a very deep person. Seeks to understand people not just superficially, but with a depth that would help him know exactly where they belong in the scheme of things. Of course, I don't come from a family which would have privileged me to know such deep stuff. And I would dare say, without any fear of equivocation, that I have learned great things, great lessons from him that have propelled me to see the world a little differently than I used to before I began working for him. And therefore, to say with all honesty that I have gained is an understatement. I've gained immensely from the insights that I have garnered and gleaned from merely being around him when I was around him. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ngari Gituku, for your time and condolences.
Thank you very much.
We take a short break right here on